There is a wound that never bleeds, a scar no one can see. It doesn't throb like a fresh injury, nor does it announce itself like a broken bone. Instead, it lingers beneath the skin of your consciousness, a quiet, persistent whisper that says, you are not safe. You may not even recognize it at first. It disguises itself as hesitation before speaking your mind, as the tightening in your chest when someone's disapproval looms, as the hollow exhaustion after another day spent contorting yourself to fit expectations. But here is the truth. You were never meant to live this way, Carl Jung once wrote, until you make the unconscious conscious. It will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And so we must ask, what if the greatest harm inflicted upon you is not the obvious betrayals, the cruel words, the abandonment, but the silent, unseen erosion of your own sovereignty? What if the deepest wound is not the pain others caused, but the permission you unknowingly gave them to keep causing it? Consider this paradox. The more you fear being hurt, the more power you surrender to those who can hurt you. Every flinch at a raised voice, every suppressed truth to avoid conflict, every moment spent molding yourself into what others demand. Each one is a silent transaction. You hand over a fragment of your autonomy in exchange for a fleeting illusion of safety. But safety never comes. Instead, you become a prisoner of unseen forces, conditioned reflexes, inherited fears, the ghosts of past wounds dictating your present. Why does this happen? Because the human mind is wired to avoid pain at all costs. And so, when someone harms you, whether through cruelty, neglect, or manipulation, your psyche does something insidious. It internalizes the threat. It convinces you that the way to avoid future pain is to shrink, to obey, to anticipate the blows before they land. You learn to walk on eggshells in your own life, policing your words, your desires, even your thoughts, all to avoid provoking the storm. But here is the devastating irony. In trying to escape pain, you become its greatest enabler. You grant others the power to define your worth. You allow their words to carve grooves in your mind, their actions to shape your emotional landscape. You build fortresses around your heart, not realizing that the walls themselves become the cage. And so, the cycle continues. Each withdrawal, each compromise, each act of self-betrayal reinforcing the belief that you are at the mercy of external forces. But what if there is another way? What if the real prison is not the pain itself, but the belief that you must keep suffering it? What if the key to your freedom lies not in avoiding hurt, but in rendering it powerless over you? This is not mere optimism. This is the fundamental shift. The moment you realize that pain, in its deepest sense, is not something that happens to you, but something that happens within you. And if it happens within you, then it is also within your power to dismantle it. Jung called this process individuation, the reclaiming of the self from the clutches of unconscious fears. It is the realization that no one can truly harm you unless you first grant them the authority to do so. But how? How do you strip away the conditioning, the fear, the invisible chains? The answer lies in the shadows, in the parts of yourself you've been too afraid to face. You were born free, then the world taught you fear. From the moment you could understand language, you were handed an invisible script. Don't cry too loud. Don't want too much. Don't disagree. Don't take up space. These were not laws written in any book, yet they governed you more ruthlessly than any tyrant's decree. And with each suppressed emotion, each stifled impulse, you learned a dangerous lie. Safety requires surrender. But who designed this system? And why does it hold such power over you? The answer lies in the intersection of psychology, philosophy, and the brutal mechanics of human survival. 1. The birth of the wounded self. Carl Jung believed that the psyche is not a blank slate, but a battlefield, a place where primal instincts collide with societal conditioning. When a child's natural expressions, anger, need, desire, are met with punishment or withdrawal, the mind does something extraordinary. It splits. One part becomes the acceptable, polished persona, the good child, the pleasing partner, the obedient worker. The other part brimming with unacceptable emotions, is exiled into the shadow. But the shadow does not disappear. It festers. It whispers. It emerges in sudden outbursts of rage, in paralyzing self-doubt, in the inexplicable feeling that you are always on the verge of being found out. This is the first great deception. You believe the world hurts you, but the real violence happens inside, where you disown yourself to survive. The illusion of external control. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this centuries ago when he wrote, "You must become who you are." But how can you become yourself when you've been trained to seek validation from the very forces that diminish you? Society operates on a simple, brutal equation. Conformity is rewarded. Rebellion is punished. From schoolrooms to boardrooms, you are conditioned to seek safety and obedience. But this safety is a mirage. Your worth to others, parents, partners, bosses, social media. The more you empower them to devastate you with a frown, a rejection, a withheld approval. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, uncovered a chilling truth. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. But most never find that space. They react automatically, like a flinching dog that still cowers from a raised hand long after the beatings have stopped. The Stockholm syndrome of the soul. Here lies the darkest twist. You don't just fear pain, you worship it. You return to toxic relationships, replay old betrayals in your mind, and cling to narratives that paint you as the victim. Why? Because pain, when familiar, feels like control. If you can predict the hurt, you can brace for it, and so, you unconsciously recreate conditions of your suffering, mistaking repetition for mastery. Jean-Paul Sartre called this bad faith. The act of lying to yourself to avoid the terrifying responsibility of freedom. It's easier to say this is just how life is than to face the truth. You are not powerless. You are in a self-made prison, clutching the keys. 4. The spiritual betrayal. Ancient philosophies and modern psychology agree on one truth. Suffering is not inherent to existence. It is created by resistance. The Buddha taught that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. The Stoics proclaimed, "You are hurt the moment you believe yourself to be." Yet most people live in reverse. They demand that reality conform to their fragile expectations, then crumble when it refuses. They beg the world to spare them pain, not realizing that the plea itself is the wound. The turning point. This is where the hidden problem reveals itself. You were never broken. You were programmed. But programs can be rewritten. The question is no longer why does this keep happening to me, but why do I keep allowing it? And with that question, the walls of the prison begin to tremble. You do not see the chains, but you feel their weight. They drag behind you in every relationship, every decision, every moment of hesitation. They are not made of iron, but of something far more persistent: memory, fear, and the silent conviction that you are still that wounded child who had no choice. But the consequences of this illusion are not passive. They are alive, shaping your reality in ways so subtle you mistake them for fate. 1. The self-fulfilling prophecy of pain. Neurologically, your brain is a prediction machine. It scans the present for patterns of the past, preparing you for threats before they arrive. But when your past is pain, your mind becomes a fortress built against ghosts. You walk into a room and brace for judgment before a word is spoken. You hesitate before speaking your truth, already hearing the echo of disapproval. You sabotage opportunities, not out of incompetence, but because success feels like a betrayal of the identity you've built. The identity of someone who cannot be safe, who does not get what they desire. This is the cruelest consequence. Your defenses become the very thing that invites the hurt you fear. Studies on transference reveal how we unconsciously assign roles to new people based on old wounds, expecting the lover to abandon, the friend to betray, the authority figure to crush us. And like a snake biting its own tail, the expectation alters your behavior in ways that provoke the outcome. You become the architect of your own suffering. 2. The emotional tax of hypervigilance. Imagine carrying a glass of water everywhere you go, terrified to spill a drop. Now imagine that glass is your psyche, and the water is the unbearable tension of waiting for the next blow. This is the reality for those who live in the shadow of past harm. The body remains in a state of low-grade alarm, flooding itself with cortisol, shortening the breath, tightening the muscles, or to survive a threat that exists primarily in memory, chronic anxiety, unexplained fatigue, a mind that races even in silence. These are not personal failures. They are the biological receipts of a war waged inside you, where the battlefield is your nervous system and the enemy is a phantom. 3. The death of authenticity. Here lies the most insidious consequence. You forget who you are. When survival depends on reading rooms, pleasing others, and smothering your instincts, the authentic self retreats. It does not disappear. It goes underground, whispering in dreams, in sudden bursts of creativity, in the inexplicable grief you feel when you see someone living freely. Jung called this the loss of the soul. Kierkegaard warned of sickness unto death, not physical death, but the spiritual death of living as someone else. And so you wear masks. The agreeable mask for those you fear. The tough mask for those you distrust. The perfect mask for those you distrust. The perfect mask for those whose love feels conditional. But masks fuse to skin. One day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the eyes staring back. The collective hypnosis. This is not just your story. It is the human story. Entire cultures are built on the same fear. Obey or you will be cast out. Religion weaponizes it. Sin and be punished. Capitalism exploits it. Produce or be worthless. Relationships codify it. Need too much and be abandoned. We call this normal. We call it maturity. But it is neither. It is mass Stockholm syndrome, a world where billions march to the same rhythm, not because it is true, but because no one dares to stop and ask, who told me this was the only way? The moment of clarity, the consequences are invisible until they're undeniable. A life half-lived, relationships that feel like transactions, a soul-deep exhaustion no amount of sleep can cure. But this is not the end. It is the turning point, the moment you realize, if the problem is internal, so is the solution. There is a moment, a split second when the old script fails, when a voice inside you, long suppressed, rises with the clarity of a struck bell, no more. This is not anger, not despair, it is something far more dangerous to the status quo. Sovereignty, the realization that you have been kneeling before imaginary thrones, that the chains were never locked, only held in place by your own grip. Now comes the rebellion. 1. The first act of defiance. Withdraw your consent. Every system of control depends on one thing: your belief in its power. The moment you withdraw your consent, your silent agreement to be harmed, the entire architecture of suffering begins to crumble. How? Name the lie. When you feel that old fear, if I speak up, I'll be punished. Recognize, this is not prophecy. This is programming. Disrupt the pattern. If you normally people please, let someone be disappointed. If you normally shrink, take up space. Watch as the sky does not fall. Reclaim language. Stop saying they made me feel, and start saying I allowed myself to feel. This is what Sartre meant when he wrote, "Freedom is what you do with what's been done to you." 2. Shadow work. The reclamation of power. Jung's greatest insight. What you refuse to acknowledge owns you. Your rage, your neediness, your unacceptable desires. These are not weaknesses. They are exiled power. The process: locate your shadow. What traits do you judge harshly in others? The answer reveals what you've disowned in yourself. Dialogue with it. If your shadow were a person, what would it say? You called me weak, but I'm the part that refused to die. Integrate it. The bully's confidence, the victim's sensitivity, the unbreakable whole. This is not self-improvement, it is self-recovery. 3. The neurological revolution. Your brain has been wired for threat detection. Now, you must rewire it for sovereignty. Neuroplasticity hack. Each time you choose a new response, speaking when you'd normally stay silent, you carve a neural pathway. Do it 10 times, it becomes habit. 100, it becomes identity. The 90-second rule. When triggered, remember, emotional chemicals flood then dissipate in 90 seconds. The rest is you choosing to replay the pain. Yoga, breathwork, martial arts, these aren't hobbies. They are mutinies against a nervous system stuck in the past. 4. The alchemy of perception. The Stoics were right. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Here's the alchemical shift. From why did they do this to me, to what did this event reveal about my relationship with myself? From I need them to change to the most dangerous lie you were ever told. You are fragile. But here is the secret the mystics knew, the poets glimpsed, and the warriors proved. You are not a vase to be shattered. You are the fire that reshapes itself with every blow. This is not metaphor. This is physics. 1. The illusion of the wounded self. All this time you've carried an assumption. What hurt me defines me. But peel back the layers, and a staggering truth appears. The wounded self is a story, not a sentence. Neuroscience confirms. Your brain edits memories each time you recall them. The past isn't fixed. It's renegotiable. That betrayal. It didn't make you weak. It revealed where your boundaries needed fortification. That abandonment. It didn't prove you're unlovable. It severed you from love that was conditional. That failure. It wasn't the end. It was the demolition required to build something truer. Jung saw this when he wrote, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. 2. The quantum shift. From victim to alchemist. Watch closely. This changes everything. Pain X awareness. Power. The equation transforms when you realize the Buddha's words only had weight because you were never taught your own. The lover's neglect only devastated because you'd outsourced your worth. The world's cruelty only broke you because you mistook its reflection for the truth. Now the alchemy begins. That childhood trauma becomes the fuel for your deepest empathy. That heartbreak becomes the compass pointing you towards self-love. That humiliation becomes the grit in your diamond. This is what the alchemists meant by turn lead into gold. Not denial, transmutation. 3. The ultimate invincibility. Here lies the paradox that terrifies all tyrants. The moment you stop fearing pain, you become unstoppable. History's freest minds proved it. Viktor Frankl found meaning in Auschwitz. Nietzsche philosophized with a body racked by disease. The mystics smiled while being burned at the stake. Not because they were masochists, because they'd discovered the cheat code. When you withdraw the meaning of harm, the event loses its fangs. Try it now. Name your deepest wound. Then ask, how did this event secretly serve my evolution? Watch as the monster reveals itself as a disfigured teacher. 4. The death and rebirth of identity. This is the initiation you didn't consent to but needed. The old you had to die for the real you to emerge. Like a snake shedding skin, or a forest fire making way for new growth. Your suffering wasn't random. It was initiatory. The people who left, they went your tribe. The dreams that collapsed, they were too small for your soul. The masks that cracked, they were suffocating your truth. Now you stand in the ashes with a question. If I'm no longer the victim of my story, who am I? The final realization. Breathe this in. No one can hurt you unless you mistake their opinion for reality, their judgment for truth, their limitations for yours. You are not a leaf in the wind. You are the storm. Those who betrayed you, they were actors in your hero's journey. The heartbreaks, they were love letters from the universe, saying wake up. The endless seeking for safety, it ends now, because safety was never out there. It was always in here. The last mask falls. This is the moment of naked truth. You've spent lifetimes building fortresses around a treasure that was never under threat. The love you sought in others, it was your own, reflected back. The approval you craved, a distorted memory of your inherent worth. The pain you feared, just the friction of your wings growing. Now you know, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because the world changes, but because you've remembered your true nature. Unbreakable, unshakable, already free. The journey ends where it began, with a simple choice. Will you live? this truth, or keep pretending you're still in chains.